Hello, folks, and welcome back to SQL in the City Streamed. We are going to now talk about some crucial data privacy and protection insights for 2019. But since I am in Cambridge, I'm going to say they are privacy and protection insights for 2019.
I've been learning to say privacy for about the last 2 years. It's really hard work. I'm going to stick with privacy.
I'll talk about privacy then.
Okay, let's swap.
I'm presenting today with Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard Macaskill. I'm a product manager at Redgate Software. I've had the honor of working on SQL Clone, SQL Provision, and Data Masker, helping get those to the market and help people up the game on protecting their data. Prior to that, I was an Oracle and SQL Server database developer, DBA, IT manager, what have you, and I'm an a data governance Bolshevik. Any means necessary. I think we're going to bring data governance to the world and
Richard is
up the game.
You're on a mission.
I am.
You are leading the charge. You are leading the charge. I am Kendra Little, and I am an evangelist at Redgate Software. It's been really great starting to work at Redgate and getting to know the people who are bringing us products to help advance this mission and making it easier and easier to act on some concerns that I have had for a long time about how we manage data, things that have gotten creepier and creepier and creepier, but have been really difficult in the past to actually do anything about. So we're going to talk to you today about 3 insights about data privacy and protection that you can act on in the future. And I know a lot of us haven't done this yet, but what we're going to talk about in this session are insights and reasons that you can use to help say, I am going to start championing privacy or privacy, whichever way you want to say it, in 2019, and I'm going to help my organization do this better. I am going to protect our customers. So we're going to talk about how compliance is shifting left, what that means. We're going to talk about why perimeter protection is no longer sufficient, and also how taking care of this and starting to work on this challenge can actually help save you money in the long run in some situations. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive in, and Richard's going to talk about how compliance is shifting left.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Kendra. So compliance is shifting left. I mean, we're speaking to organizations day in, day out at Redgate. That's one of the great things about working here. We get to speak to DBAs. We get to see the shifts that are happening. I don't think it's just that we're big heads and think we know it all. It's we see what's happening. We get a great, really privileged view. So when we say compliance is shifting left, what we're talking about is that we're seeing change happening in people's real life organizations. People really are championing those causes and making a difference and protecting their data better than they were before. It's not about being perfect. It's about being better.
Right.
And so maybe it's worth reminding ourselves where this term came from. Even if you use it every day, it's worth often reminding yourself why you talk about these terms. It's not just words. Shifting left came about, of course, through reference to the database pipeline, through the development pipeline, first of all with applications, and then later on, for most people, bringing the database into it. And making changes on the left-hand side from a sort of Eurocentric perspective, we start on the left, of course. The change starts on the left-hand side. There's some development, there's some thinking about what you want to do, how you want to change it, and then you start to evaluate your change and build up confidence in it before it goes into that red-hot production system that was the bread and butter of every business, that actually pays our wages at the end of the day. So we started off shifting left by shifting security practices left, shifting testing left. Mm-hmm. For Redgate, we've also started in the last couple of years to bring data to the left-hand side, to take better control of that process. So as part of our evaluation of our software, we want to make it experience realistic scenarios. We want to test our software in real-life scenarios as early as we possibly can. That means shifting left along the pipeline. Similarly with security. We don't just apply security at the end of the day. We ought not to. I really hope. Just like Grant was saying, you got SA all over the place until you get to in Grant's example, he had the SA, his application running under SA. Okay, that's really bad. Yep. But even if you've got half decent role-based authentication in your production systems, surely you don't want that to be the only place where you have them. You want to introduce that early. You want to shift security left. Mm-hmm. And I would say you want to shift governance left. You want to shift compliance, oversight, caring about what happens to your data, caring about how it's going to be controlled, and that you have knowledge about it, shifting that responsibility to the left. Right. And that aligns with a lot of the messaging that we're getting from regulators, from practitioners, from sort of best practice guides about how to improve the way that we work with data in the interests of privacy and protection.
Right. Yes.
So why should you care about shifting left? Why should you as an organization care? Well, there's a very simple reason, which is the case law is starting to be established around data protection, where it wasn't really established before. So this is an example from the UK. You might have heard about the Morrisons supermarket data breach. This was a disgruntled employee who leaked some very sensitive data to the internet, tried to sell it, I believe, and sent it to 4 corners of the internet. So that was employee malfeasance. So the employee was sentenced to a long jail term, not unreasonably, but the employer was also found responsible. The employer was found responsible because they ought to have had the controls, they ought to have had the oversight, they ought to have known. Employees are responsible for what employers are responsible for what employees do.
Right.
And likewise, in the other direction, I should mention as well that was a class action lawsuit. It was the first class action lawsuit in the UK relating to data. So, you know, we've looked at GDPR coming in, we've looked at California Consumer Privacy Act, we've looked at SHIELD, we've looked at what do we think is going to be the impact of that. It was speculative a couple of years ago. We're now seeing the case law being laid down. This stuff is for real, and it's something your organization has to deal with.
The California Privacy Act, which has been passed but not enacted, it does contain a private right of action as well. So if we think that this is only happening in Europe, we need to think again, because it is happening globally for sure.
That's right. And GDPR has a clause in it that allows you to defer your data rights to another. So you can, a group of people can say, I want this organization to represent my rights as a data subject.
Wow.
Which is an invitation to a class action lawsuit, of course.
All right.
But also the organisation as a whole is responsible, and the regulators and the lawmakers have been very clear about this. Elizabeth Denham is the UK Information Commissioner. She came from British Columbia. She was Information Commissioner in Canada. Prior to that, she's got a wealth of experience in acting, and Canada led the way in many of these reforms. She's very clear. If a business can't show that good data protection is a cornerstone of their practices, then they leave themselves open to fine or other enforcement that could damage bank balance or business reputation. It's the whole organisation. You have to show that it's the cornerstone of your practices. It's not something that you tack on at the end. It's not something that the DBA does. It's not something the InfoSec team does in isolation.
Right.
It's something that the whole organisation does. So when we talk about compliance shifting left, that means that caring about it is shifting left, just as in DevOps, caring about the operational status of your application shifted left. It wasn't something you threw over the wall. Similarly, governance, compliance, doing the right thing, making sure the right thing is done is not something you throw over the wall, that you defer to some other team. Right. We're all involved. Developers are involved.
Right. Which hopefully turns into empowering us rather than just scaring us.
Exactly. So it means we've all got a piece of the responsibility.
Yes.
You know, it's the right thing. It's not just adding another task onto your daily workload.
Absolutely.
It's adding something else that you should care about. You should care about the whole. You should care about your application in production. You should care about your organisation protecting data adequately.
Yes.
If you're a developer and you see some sensitive data in a less protected environment, perhaps you should have a word about something like that. And also there's very formal requirements like the data protection impact assessment, which is part of this new wave of regulation. We're encouraged to actually sit down, map out the impact of our change, and assess whether that's appropriate to the risk appetite of the organisation. So let's have a look at one of the ways that Redgate helps with shifting left. You may well be aware, especially if you've watched Redgate webinars or if you've been to talk to us at the booths at conferences in recent years, most organisations copy down live data in order to evaluate their software with realistic scenarios as early as possible. That's entirely reasonable. In doing so, the evaluation is entirely reasonable. Copying down the data, increasing the attack surface area for that data is not reasonable. We've got a conundrum here. We've got a problem.
Hard to avoid, though, sometimes.
It is. It is. Do you ship less safe software? Do you put less safe software into production? Or do you sanitize the data that you're going to evaluate it with? I think you know what side I'm going to come down on. So what do we do about, what do we mean when we say shift left workloads? Well, of course, in this view, you see in this diagram on the right-hand side, we've got our production systems, and we've got a boundary, quite rightly, we're isolated. The DBA is sitting outside production, taking some data, preparing it for secondary use, replacing the personal data, remapping permissions, hopefully not all to SA, just remapping them to something that's appropriate for those people, that environment. updating internal reference data is very common, and making it available to developers so that they have the sanitized data, so they can get the best out of protecting the data and testing, evaluating their changes. So what does that look like? Well, SQL Clone is a SQL, which is also sold as SQL Provision when you buy it with the fully integrated masking. Has a dashboard where you can see that we have a whole bunch of images. These are the cookie cutters that are ready for distributing as cookies. These are the image is the copy of the production database, sanitized, made appropriate, and then made available for a very, very rapid reuse in dev, test, training, and demo environments. So I'll take you through how we put together a SQL clone image. We can create an image from a backup of any format, pretty much. We can take it from a live connection to a SQL server. We're going to do, in this case, we're going to take a live connection to a SQL server. We're going to take the AdventureWorks database from my RMI Clone 1 server. And this is where it gets interesting. I've got the opportunity, so I'm making the cookie cutter here. I'm making the thing that's going to define what all those copies of the database are like when developers use them and when testers use them, when they get exercised in testing integration workflows and so on. I've got the opportunity to modify the image before it goes anywhere. So it's not available to anybody to use outside production until these modifications have happened. And I can integrate it. We've got integration with our data masking software here.
And there's something on the screen that the sharp-eyed people watching this might notice. On the right of the screen, there's something that didn't used to be there that I haven't seen there in the past before.
It's super exciting. So we've got our data masker product, battle hardened, 15 years in the market. It can handle pretty much any data masking workload you want to throw at it. We've also been investing in the next generation of data masking tools, much easier to use, much more intuitive, really powerful, and we call that Data Masker vNext. That's available as a preview download if you go to the Redgate website.
Oh, very cool.
That's codename Figleaf. So in this case, I've used a Figleaf masking plan, which I prepared earlier, and that's going to run against my database before the image is sealed off as a virtual hard drive, and is then available for self-service clone databases or automation.
Unrelated, I think Figleaf is the funniest product name that I've ever heard for something that masks things you don't want people to see.
I think that's pretty good.
Pretty memorable.
Quick aside on data masking. So we've seen lots of data masking systems. Maybe we've written some ourselves. I tried a trivially simple one in a previous role. Xing out values, just putting some nonsense in there, using a regular expression to, jumble up some stuff.
Nothing at don'temailme.com.
Yes, example.com for all the emails. That's good as far as it goes. For some cases, that is appropriate. And I've seen some systems. I saw one recently at PASS that one of our friends of Redgate had written. It was appropriate for that organization. But there are a lot of scenarios where you need to go an awful lot further.
Right.
And data masking, static data masking, replacing the data that's there with something that's safer to use is pretty involved.
Yes.
So I wanted to call out a few of the reasons why you want to use a masking tool rather than just write a script. So first of all, realistic data values. Can you use your application once you've generated these replacement values? Can you actually, does it operate? Can you put it in front of people? Can you hit F5 and work through a realistic scenario? If you're just Xing everything out, so if you're just replacing all the transactional values with 1, 2, 3, the chances are you're going to have trouble there. So having realistic data is really, really key to actually getting that experience of what was my change like? Like for like. Have I done the thing that I was asked to do in this work item? Does my demonstration environment actually show people what it's going to be like to use our company or our software, our products?
Is it going to perform?
And does it fire up when you have 5? When you start replacing data, you also find that there's an awful lot of data that's duplicated, beyond duplicated. It's all over databases. Denormalization is the norm.
Right. It's
all over the place. So we hardly ever see data that exists in perfect third normal form and only exists once in each database.
Right.
So if you change a value in one table, say, for example, you change an address, are you going to have to introduce that change in other tables? Most cases we find that there's a scenario like that in most databases when we look at the masking sets that our customers are running. Other things, referential integrity. If you have a key value, so the NHS, for example, I know we have NHS ID. It's all over there as a primary key, all over the databases.
Right.
That's pretty identifying. There's a one-to-one correlation with every UK citizen from NHS ID. You're going to have to replace that. That means the foreign keys have to be replaced as well. Non-trivial task. And the bigger version of that is that the systems use multiple data sources, especially since sort of microservices and service-oriented architecture have come along.
Right.
It's unusual to have one database behind one application. They're normally hitting a bunch of services which are hitting a bunch of databases. Do you want to correlate the values across them so they all make sense together? Most people do. Again, not a trivial thing to script. And then performance. You can't be sitting around waiting for the overnight batch to finish masking so that you have some recent realistic data. A professional masking tool is going to do some parallelization for you and allow you to take control of getting the most bang for your buck using your processor and memory as efficiently as you can.
Yeah. When I first started working in IT, my job was to build out dev and test environments. It took about 1 week for our automated solution to build out an environment, just with all the time the restores took and everything like that.
We've heard so many horror stories. One of our first customers, I'm sure you'll know who he is, for SQL Clone, spent a whole weekend doing UAT. It was very, very painful. So back to the workflow for creating my sanitized database copy. I just put my copy on a file share. My image goes just on a regular file share. I've just got an old box of disks that Redgate IT kindly let me use. They keep trying to take it off me because it's out of date apparently, and it's going to blow up. And, but that's another story. I give it a name.
People are nodding from the back of the room for people just watching the feed.
Sorry, that's an in-joke for the room. So I'm going to say where I'm going to put this thing. I'm going to give it a nice name, Demo for SQL in the City, Mastered Adventure Works. Let's move on there. And my image creation is in progress. And that's going to take about as long as a backup because it's moving the files. But of course, when we deliver clone databases, it only takes a few seconds, regardless of the size.
So artfully setting up our cookie cutter takes a little bit of time, but then we can stamp out clones right away.
That's it, and we can do that programmatically, in fact. So my image is going there, it's copying files, it's going to run that masking, then it's going to release it, and it's going to be made available to developers to use and for testing and batch and training and demo environments. Just because I did mention that we can do this all programmatically, we've got lovely PowerShell commandlets, really straightforward. All DBAs love PowerShell now. We've crossed that one. You're probably going to run these things in maintenance windows as well. So rather than sit there watching things go by, run it in your maintenance window. It's ready in the morning. When it comes to delivering clone databases, here's a little scenario I kicked off where if you're keen-eyed, you can see there's 3 different workstations in parallel are receiving a copy of my AdventureWorks mass database. Can parallelize those operations. One other thing, I mentioned shifting security left. You're probably going to want to deliver those clones just slightly differently into different environments. If you're doing role-based authentication, if you're doing the right kind of security models.
Yes.
So that's something that's come into SQL Clone relatively recently. When you're delivering a clone, you can also apply a template, a set of scripts.
Nice.
Which will make it so you should still have role-based auth roles granting very specific permissions to stored procs and tables. Certainly no SAs around. And those should be applied as early as possible. So you shift your security left, take control of your shift left of data, and you can then build that into your processes as well.
So I can have different security accounts in each environment, and if I have extra setup I want to do in some environments and not others, that empowers me to do that.
Exactly. You should probably map to a different set of AD users in Dev and UAT. But you should be mapping to AD users that are then role members, and then and then get the permissions in the right way, and do it early. So that's one key way that Redgate helps with shifting compliance left. We help you take control of the data that you introduce into those environments. We help you do the right thing in terms of applying security to it, and we help you to mask the data, sanitize it, and make it safe. And if a developer comes across some unsafe data, they can then turn to the DBA, or they can maybe get involved themselves and say, I'm not sure I should be seeing this, I'm not sure we should have this in this environment. There's something better that we can do, isn't there?
Right.
Empower the developers and put in place the tools and processes that allow you to do the right thing, make the right thing incredibly easy.
Right. Make the right thing just happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the idea of that. So that's all very well, someone might be saying, but surely, Kendra, it's all about building those big walls and the deep moat, isn't it? Get it on the outside.
Surely
it's
about
all
of that.
It's all about perimeter, isn't it?
There we go. Well, so we've gone through our first insight about compliance shifting left for process reasons. And yeah, we don't want to build our whole product and then have a code review, or build our whole product and then have a data breach. But you might think, well, we don't have to worry about this because we have a really strong network around our application, and maybe we've done some work and tried to make sure, and we're pretty darn sure that we've got detection in place for SQL injection, like Grant talked about. We've got defenses around the edge looking at what's coming into the production application so we don't have to worry about it. Well, that view is that we are protecting things at the perimeter, and that's a classic view of security, but we can't have that view anymore. One of my favorite resources I've been reading recently is the 2018 Data Breach Investigations Report. This is put out by Verizon's research department. You can download it free online. It does have a sign-up wall. But in there, they cover 53,000 incidents, and there are in that 2,216 confirmed data breaches. They do not claim this is all the data breaches that happen. They say, no, this is a sample data set. But one of the cool things about this is you can actually download all that breach data if you want. You can explore it in different ways. And they've analyzed it in this report and looked at things and said, OK, of this sample that we have, who's behind these breaches? And yeah, they did find that 73% are outsiders. And this is a multi-select question, by the way, because more than one person can be involved in a data breach. We might have a person outside an organization partner with someone inside to do the breach. So this can add up to more than 100%. But 28% involved internal actors, like the malicious grocery store employee. That is not the only malicious actor in the world. But you might think, well, the majority of these are coming from outside. Well, when we look a little deeper, although the majority of these are perpetuated by outsiders, what are they doing? This, again, is another multi-select. They can add up more than 100%. 40% of these breaches are perpetuated by hacking. And looking deep into that, OK, 30%. What does hacking mean? Well, some of the hacking is malware. Think keyloggers. They're getting keyloggers inside your network and detecting people's passwords so they can imitate an insider. Also, 17% were social attacks. You may be able to trust the good intent and goodwill of your coworkers, but can you trust them to always know what they should click on in an email and what they shouldn't click on in an email? It is increasingly very, very difficult to tell what this is. And some of these emails look really legitimate. Some of them look like they're coming from our customer. Some of them look like we need to click on them. So it's very, very hard to keep people from getting inside our network. And once they're inside our network, we may not even realize it for a very long time. 68% of breaches took months or longer to discover among the breaches that we're studying.
So Starwood, that was 2014. We've all just heard about that in the news. 500 million, the last version of that I heard. And that was discovered. That's been there since 2014.
2014, yeah. Because if you break into a system like that, why would you announce it to everyone, right? If you're that bad actor, you wouldn't. As
you said, if you've got a keylogger and you find someone's password, you're assuming that identity. So the thing I hear a lot from DBAs is, we've got pretty good guys here. I pretty much trust them.
Right.
But do you know that that's them?
Right.
When that identity executes that instruction on that machine.
Right.
There's a gap. You're just assuming that that's that person. It might be somebody else.
It absolutely might be someone else, or it might be someone with their phone who's managed to get into their account and is accessing things from theirs. We, as database administrators, we're kind of famous for not trusting developers, right? There's a concept called zero trust that I think we need to talk about, but the zero trust isn't necessarily just about not trusting developers, because in fact, they looked at 4 of those cases where it was an internal actor. And these, I believe, are the cases where the internal actor was knowing, not just that their account was compromised, but who was it? Well, the majority of these is not the developers stealing your data. It's just people with access to your systems who are exploiting that access. And maybe if we look at the numbers for managers and executives, those together are actually responsible for more than that. Yeah.
Who knew?
It's not necessarily the developers we have to worry about. And it's not, we need to think about trust in a different way. We need to have zero trust in general. Now, zero trust is a larger security concept that involves a lot of stuff from network administrators. But as database people, the concept that's really important to us is that we just can't have the assumption that data is safe inside our internal network anymore. This is a white paper from Forrester Research called The Future of Data Security. And zero trust is not a new idea. This white paper is from 2014. The concept of zero trust is 8 to 10 years old, but it's really coming into its own now. And companies like Google are publishing how they are implementing zero trust in their environments. In this white paper from 2014, they say how you do zero trust security. There's some founding principles. And one is you think about protecting the data where it is. We as database people, as developers, as database administrators, we don't have to wait for all of the network work to be done to have a zero trust approach. We can think about preventing these data breaches that erode customer confidence by doing things that we as data people can do ourselves. We can limit access. We can really look at who has that access. We can classify our data so we know where the dangerous data is. And spoiler, we'll be talking more about how to do this soon.
Guess what?
We can dispose of data when it's no longer needed. And my favorite term in here at all, they say in the white paper, they talk about devaluing or killing the data by using these abstraction techniques like we saw in the last section. So what we can do really is have this zero trust approach. And I love this as a way to talk about how data people can participate in a larger security movement that's going on, because the zero trust movement in security really is moving forward and becoming more popular. And what we're really doing in protecting data in all of these environments is having a zero trust approach. We have a fresh new case study from Kepro that we have published on our website about how SQL provision has really helped them do this, as well as improve the performance in their tools as well. Okay. So let's dig in a little bit and talk more about how the third insight on how you can help get others at your organization on board if you want to take part in this, about how it can help control spending.
Awesome.
So over to Richard.
So I liked the insight about the killing data. You know, it's not your job to keep all the data and just watch it pile up. You know, it's your job to ensure that you've got the minimal amount of data, that it's the minimal access to that data. One of our customers had a phrase I really liked. Is he wants to light up the data. So his InfoSec, I said, how will you know that you've been successful in your data classification project? He said, when I can walk up to the head of information security and say, we've solved the dark data problem. We know our data, and there's lights on it. Yeah, I love that. It's not obscure anymore. And you know what? Database administrators aren't data administrators. That's true. They don't know the data. So we're working specifically with, I'm working on data catalog early access program at the moment. We've got some software in developments that's trying to help solve the data classification headaches. It's in private preview at the moment. We've got 20 great organizations working with us, household names that you would know that have recognized that they can't really solve these security, data protection problems properly until they light up the dark data, until they actually know specifically what are we holding, why are we holding it,
what data do we have.
Yep. Right. But the exercise of reaching as an organization, deciding that you have to light up the dark data, that you have to take control of this, that you need to be able to answer specific questions before you implement fully your remediation strategy. So you've decided that it's important to take control of these things. You've read about the regulations. You know about the data breach epidemic. You've seen Grant demonstrate how easy it is to exploit a SQL injection attack. Grant demonstrating the epidemic. If that hasn't scared the pants off you or made you want to become a hacker because it looks fun, then I don't know what you're thinking. But organizations across the world are increasingly realizing that you have to be more specific. You have to go beyond the perimeter protection. You have to have a data-centric approach. And if you try to just maximize the protection that you impose on everything, you're likely to slow yourself down as an organization. You're also likely to risk overspend. So the active alignment is incredibly valuable for an organization. I think it's a great career move for a DBA as well, actually. It gets the regulation is getting database administrators, professionals, head of data services, getting them a seat at the important tables.
Absolutely.
And rightly so, because there's a big disconnect between the intent of the organization and the technical policy in almost every organization that we speak to. It's a problem for our industry, and I think we need to just face up to it and say, yes, it is. Here's what we're trying to do to improve it.
And database administrators are increasingly worried about, are robots going to take my job? Well, this is one area where the robots are not going to take your job.
They're not going to get a seat at the table when you're talking about the data remediation work.
Absolutely.
So executives have often underestimated data risks. As I said, they know they've got somebody looking after their databases. The safe place to be is to assume that it's all in hand. They are being told very clearly by the risk teams they're being told very clearly because they've got supply chain risk.
Yep.
Because the people that they want to win contracts with are saying, I want to know about your data protection. I want to. So they're recognizing that they're shoving it over the wall and saying, I'm sure our data people are good, they're looking after it all correctly, is no longer adequate.
Right.
But do they have the same picture of risk that a data professional does? That somebody who works with SQL Server permissions, someone who understands the attack vectors, the attack surface areas, do they have the same perspective? It's unlikely. So one of the things that we encourage in the creation of our data catalog, in our data classification work, is to arrive at a taxonomy with your organization in order to align on that data risk. So the message is getting through. That's clear. So this is a Redgate survey. I believe it's going to be published at some point. But we found of these medium to large enterprises, 378 respondents, 73% had data privacy and protection as a top priority for the next year.
And this is consistent with surveys I've seen done by other companies as well, that in the top 2 of the concerns, because sometimes security and compliance are listed separately, and in that case, they make the top 2 of the top 3 concerns.
That's right. Yeah, we put into data privacy and protection as a sort of catch-all. On other surveys, if you look into the detail of the actual spend that organisations are planning, this is a Gartner survey. We've got number 2 item of spend at 40%, increasing investment, is cyber and information security. It's right up there. The top one is BI and data analytics. It's a top 1 or 2 priority for pretty much for the vast majority of organisations out there.
Yeah, when it goes wrong, we get out of business.
That's right. That's right. It's become an existential threat to organisations. And knowing whether it is an existential threat or not, or whether you've got just a bad day at work, or whether you've got something that actually you need to hit the papers with now, that you need to call a task force together on now, is another key aspect of aligning on understanding where the risk lies and where the protection is best spent. So the nature of the risk is absolutely key. I remember working for an organisation that started to do risk assessments and risk management, and we had a CEO who was obsessed with the idea of a sort of dirty bomb going off in central London. This is like 10 years ago.
A physical threat.
A physical threat. He said that when the dirty bomb hits London, here's our call chain, here's what we're going to do. I'll be in my hideaway in...
We've got the bunker.
I'll be in the bunker. You can get me on this number.
Right.
But it was the idea being that if you configure yourself for the scariest thing you can think of, then you must be doing the right things. Not necessarily the case. Funny enough, a couple of months after that, we did have an emergency, and it was a contractor drilled through the power cable to the building.
Human error, a different kind of threat.
Much more mundane, much more prosaic.
Right.
And our response chain, our call chain to the bunker wasn't quite the right response in that scenario. So, but you need to understand the nature of the risks that you're running and so that you know how to apply the correct spend in the right place.
Right.
So misspending is very common. Overspend is there's plenty of material on IT overspend to read up on.
Yeah.
It is incredibly common. We've got the Department for Work and Pensions in the UK's GDPR budget is 30 times that of all the other departments in the UK government. No one's quite sure why.
I didn't know that.
So it could be because all the other departments aren't doing the right thing, or it could be that DWP is overspending. It doesn't sound right on the face of it. Yeah, so what is the nature of the risk?
Right.
And if we think it's all external actors, we might do the wrong thing. If we think it's all about the dirty bomb going off in the city,
right.
we might do the wrong thing. We need to work on it.
28% by internal actors. I mean, that's a few people.
That's pretty significant, and that was
actually kind of high.
That was on the sample set of 2,600. Right. Then that was just a sample set for 2017, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The sample set is 2,000. It's like hundreds a day. Data breaches. So if you can align with your organization, then you can start to target correctly. And a key part of that is performing data classification, is agreeing on a taxonomy, agreeing on what it is, how it is that we look at the things that we hold, and then implementing that and applying that across your data sources, across your SQL Server databases in this case.
Right.
So that's what we're doing on the technical preview. So I'll just very quickly go into some examples here of our technical preview of our data classification tool. It's a data catalog for SQL Server. It's API first. It's everything you can do in the interface, you can do in the API. That's very, very important.
We love our PowerShell.
Yeah, we love our PowerShell, and everyone. And because we know that everyone needs to integrate these things, we'll have we've got one of our customers is building a Team City build step that checks whether a particular table, they're using the Redgate tools for change control, using SQL change automation. As part of their build, they check whether any of the tables hold sensitive data. And they stop and say, consider whether they need to perform a data protection impact assessment.
Right. So the new person on the team doesn't just have to figure everything out by themselves.
It's not something you have to remember.
Right.
But you are involved in it.
Yeah. We have plenty to remember.
Yeah, exactly. There's enough to remember. So in this view, I'm looking at a bunch of instances here. Do I need to apply transparent data encryption to all of them? Do I need to buy that enterprise license so that I can do that?
Right.
I could decide to do it across the board, but that might be the wrong thing to do. There might be whole areas where there is no sensitive data whatsoever on this. I've got no sensitive data whatsoever showing on this instance on the right here.
Right.
I probably don't need TDE. I'm going to have to go a bit further, drill down into the databases to get a fuller view of that. I'm going to have to start applying my taxonomy. And we're working on, bringing some smarts to this, trying to sort of, de-scope, minimize the amount of work you actually have to do, and to help you with suggestions and get you through the classification, because it's not easy.
Right.
But we think we can get there. A key part I mentioned is the taxonomy. You're probably going to need to define a set of tags or attributes for the data that you hold that makes sense to your organization, so that you can have that conversation, so that you can subdivide the task. So you can say, I'm going to do these ones first, or these are the top priority. But also so that, for example, I can associate the databases with the systems that they're used in.
Right.
Because business owners tend to think in terms of systems. Where is your customer data? It's in that system. The database administrator will say, well, it might be in that system from your perspective. The data actually resides in a database, which is accessed by these services. And we need to join up that path so that we can get shared understanding, and so that we know that we're investing correctly on protecting it.
And I love this because we talk about configuration as code now, but we also need business users to be able to see our configuration in very important ways, especially when it comes to sensitive data. And this does that, and it has the API. So I love the concept.
And get a view of it, because actually one of the things that we're exploring with our customers is once you've got an open API, putting something like Power BI in front of it is really, really easy. If you want the business-oriented view that says, here's the sensitive data by system, once you've got your classification done and you've got your the tags, the taxonomy that makes sense, it's easy to expose that in the way that they understand it, as well as exposing it in the way that you understand it, so you can have that conversation and you can get that alignment that's so valuable. So there you have it. So we think alignment is key. We think classifying data is the next part of the story. So watch this space. That's just that's in preview at the moment. We're working to get that into a more public technical preview really soon. But we think we've got masking. We've got the ability to shift compliance left. We've got database provisioning, and filling in that part of the story with classification is really a really exciting space at the moment.
Yeah. One of the things I think about with classification that I think is actually kind of interesting, and just with all of these systems, even with the SQL provision, which we've been talking about how you can use it in very important things, but of course, I like thinking about other ways that we could use it that might be interesting. And with the classification, I am like, well, there's just certain maintenance tasks as a DBA that I might be able to do with that once things are classified, like write a script that says, let's make sure that anything that has tags on it that indicate this is production has a backup.
Yeah.
Right, that is tied in with protecting the data, but it's also just a regular task that I need to do, whereas I'm going to be less concerned about backups for other environments if I can just recreate them. So thinking about that, we were having a conversation yesterday about provision in terms of, with provision, are there workloads? And you know of a workload where it's not just being used for protecting data, but it's also being used to scale a workload in an interesting way. I just thought that was so interesting. If we have time, I'd like you to share it.
Absolutely. I was always interested in this use case because I'd seen a bit of it having worked in financial services. But for evaluating systematic trading models, we've got one of our customers, one of our early customers, in fact, they've been working with it for years. They exercise their systematic trading models against thousands of copies of the market data databases, refreshed overnight. So, so if you want to you exercise these things, test the models, find out which algorithms produced the best results given last night's close of business market data, then you can do that very, very quickly and in parallel by using virtualized database copies. And so you get the answers quicker. So you learn quicker, and of course, when you're evaluating that, that's kind of, it's machine learning. It's it's picking the winners, and then you throw the losers away. You also pick the scenarios. One of the things they do is manipulate the market data. So they say, so if everything was as it is now, except that Black Monday happened tomorrow, how do all my models work? So you generate a sort of little box of horrors, which is a lot of curated sample databases, curated scenarios. And if you can do that on virtualized copies, that's incredibly efficient. They do thousands every night.
A little box of horrors is cute when it's contained. When it's not contained, it's not nearly as cute.
The box is the important part.
It's absolutely not nearly as cute. So we've been having a great time chatting. Actually, the YouTube chat has been pretty active today in terms of talking through things on SQL in the City. We have more coming up, so if you want to join us in the YouTube chat or on Twitter with the SQL in the City hashtag, please do. And these are the insights that we covered today. So quick recap. And these insights, they can work for you whether your security product involves Redgate tools or not. Of course, I hope that it does. But the insights that I think are really important are that compliance is shifting left. More and more, we don't want to just do a security evaluation when we're code complete or when we're ready to ship a product, because we may come against a big blocker there. We want to do it much earlier in the process.
You get more eyes on a process as well.
Absolutely.
Let's get everyone involved.
Absolutely. Second, when we think about our security approach, we need to get rid of this vision of the moat around the castle, because that moat doesn't keep people out anymore. They're sneaking in with the phishing attacks. They're sneaking in through the malware. Sometimes they're already inside our organization. Sometimes they stole a laptop at a conference that had a bunch of data synced down onto it. We need to take really a data-centric approach and kill the data where appropriate in different environments with the wording from that white paper, and change it so that it is no longer as dangerous anymore. And then finally, the third one, I'll let you do that one.
Okay, and also you need to align. You need to understand the risk appetite of your organization. You need to shine a light on the dark data. You need to help that your C-level execs, who now are explicitly responsible for the data protection practices of your organization, go and help them. Don't sit it out. And a key part of that is just having a really close, hard look at what you hold. And if you can classify your data, if you can agree a taxonomy, these are the ways that we look at our data, then you're going to get your spend right. You're going to get your prioritization right. You're going to be able to put in place data breach scenarios, ways that you can deal with it. You can know the scale of the risk that you're facing, and you're going to know what to do much, much better. So start that alignment as early as you possibly can.
Absolutely. And it's a big thing to do for your career as well. So next steps, we do have at the SQL in the City site, you can download all of the slide decks of the talks you've seen today. For this one, we also have just a quick PDF that summarizes the insights that we covered. So if you don't want to go through the whole slide deck, you can have a really short reminder of these 3 key things for 2019 that we talked about today. So thanks so much for joining us. This has been really fun, Richard.
It's good, isn't it?
We got to do this again sometime. Really
Sounds good.
So thanks, folks, and I will see you again a little later because today I'm doing another talk today. So see you again soon.